Half a millennium of Christianity is a truly sight to behold, even more so in the farthest corners of the Orient. The Philippine Islands have seen the best the world has to offer. It is a melting pot of cultures, both great and small. It also is one of the best examples of solidarity in the world, where different races, tribes, and religions come together in joy and peace. In particular, an explorer named Ferdinand Magellan was tasked at finding another route towards the east to gain access to spices. Fast forward to today's era, the Philippines has been dubbed as the most successful Christian nation in Asia, all thanks to Magellan's perseverance along with his crew and fleet. Now, how did this happen? How did Christianity survive for 500 years, since 1521? Asia is a diverse continent. Its people have different cultures, different traits, and different arts. The religions found in the continent also share its differences from one another, being the birthplace of Christianity, Hinduism, Shinto, Buddhism, Judaism, and Islam. Asia hosts more major religions in the world. For that, the Philippines is a predominantly Christian nation. With that said, the Philippines has established itself as the Roman Catholic, as well as the capital of Christianity in Asia. However, Christianity wasn't always this established in the past. The Philippines then. Before 1521, pre-colonial Philippines was vastly pagan in terms of religion. Animism was widely practiced, and there are hints and traces of Hinduism and Buddhism throughout the archipelago. Still, researchers are uncertain about this since Christianity has become the primary driving force in the islands. Then came Magellan and his fleet. Last March 16, 1521, Ferdinand Magellan, in his attempt to go around the world, brought him to the shores of Homanon Island. This relatively small but inhabited island is situated to the southeast of Samar Island. The real birthday of Christianity in the Philippines was March 31st, 1521. It was Easter Sunday. Magellan's crew needed to commemorate Easter with a Mass. The first Mass was therefore held at Limasawa Island, situated to the south of Leyte Island. This Mass was mostly for Magellan's crew, headed by the voyage's chaplain, Father Pedro de Valderrama. Surprisingly, some natives attended the Mass despite the language barrier. After the Mass was held, they planted the first cross on a hill in Limasawa, thereby signifying the first Christian stronghold and birth of Roman Catholicism in the Philippines. The Philippine Islands were not yet called the Philippines at that time, but rather it was called the Archipelago of St. Lazarus, since Magellan got to Homanon during St. Lazarus' Day. The first baptism of the natives and the giving of the Santo Niño de Cebu happened last April 14, 1521. The image was a gift to Ra Humabon and Hara Amihen, who both took the baptismal names of Carlos and Juana after Spain's king and queen mother at that time. Many Filipinos deem this image to be highly miraculous because it was lost in time since 1521, but was found amidst the remnants of a big fire on April 27, 1565, without any form of burn damage. The image is the oldest Christian artifact in the Philippines, where it can be currently found in Basila Mena de Santo Menino in Cebu. Going back, Ferdinand Magellan died as a poison arrow struck him during one of his skirmishes with native hostile tribes. Magellan supported the Rahanaje of Cebu against the Keratuan of Mactan, who was led by Datu Lapu-Lapu. Thereby, Lapu-Lapu became the first Philippine national hero, having resisted the occupation of foreigners for the very first time. Magellan's forces lost in the famous Battle of Mactan last April 27, 1521. Juan Sebastian Elcano took command after Ferdinand Magellan's death and made sail towards the west, where he got to Spain in a relatively short time in 1522. This was then recorded as the first circumnavigation of the world. The Philippines and the rise of Christianity. When Magellan came to the Philippines, it was heavily dominated by pagans. Muslims were also all over the place. In fact, Manila was assumed to be a heavily Muslim settlement when the Philippines was discovered by the Spanish. Therefore, an expedition to evangelize the Philippines was ordered by the King of Spain. Miguel Lopez de Legazpi led the expedition, and after making blood compacts with different datus in the area, he made his first Spanish colony on Cebu Island last April 27, 1565. The fire that was mentioned earlier with Santo Niño de Cebu was due to the natives setting their houses on fire as Legazpi's forces pushed inward. After the contingent of Legazpi discovers that the image was unscathed, They named their first established colony on the ruins of the Villa del Santísimo Nombre de Jesús, or the town of the most holy name of Jesus. The expedition to explore new islands in the archipelago continued. This time he did not lead it, but his grandson, Goite de Legazpi. Miguel Lopez de Legazpi then established a government and named the archipelago the Philippine Islands in honor of the King Philip II of Spain. With Legazpi's expedition and conquest come to the Augustinian missionaries and friars. They were with the expedition to evangelize the country and Christianize it from the inside out, thereby marking the rapid rise of Christianity in the Philippines. As such, it is said that the Philippines was claimed by Spain with the zeal of the missionaries. The Augustinians were the first missionaries in the Philippines, followed by the Franciscans in 1578. The Jesuits came in 1581, and the Dominicans also came to the islands in 1587. The See of Manila was established until August 14, 1595, when it was elevated to an archdiocese status. Back then, the dioceses of Cebu, Nueva Segovia, and Caceres were under the Archdiocese of Manila. These events marked the rise of Christianity in the Philippines, to which the natives welcomed gladly. Several churches founded by missionary zeal. Frankly, the Philippines was not integrated into the Spanish Empire through violence, but through religious zeal. Somehow, the natives were hungry for religion. This religious fervor of the Filipinos made it easy for missionaries to spread the word about the gospel of Jesus Christ. Despite being heavily pagans and Muslims at the time, the missionaries were highly effective and converted most of the natives to Christianity, more specifically, Roman Catholicism. Because the natives were highly religious, it had a feedback effect, where people spread the news about this new religion called Christianity. Furthermore, the Doctrina Christiana, or the Christian Doctrine, became the first printed book in the Philippines in 1593, making it much easier to spread information about Christianity throughout the archipelago. Several churches were also erected starting in 1571. The Manila Cathedral and the San Agustin Church were both built the same year. These churches became increasingly built on town centers, signifying that the church was to be the center binding force of a town's integrity and spirituality. Besides churches and sacred texts, images of prolific Catholic figures were also delivered to the country from the Latin American colonies. Images such as the Black Nazarene are also venerated to a great extent despite being in the country since 1606. The Roman Catholic Church was truly growing during the time. Educational institutions marked the height of Christian growth. On April 28, 1611, the Pontifical and Royal University of Santo Tomas was established. Run by Dominicans, this marked the very first time the church used educational institutions to further imprint Christian values on the younger generation. Following closely in 1620 was the establishment of the Colegio de San Juan de Latran, Colegio de Santa Isabel in 1632, and others. These institutions were built so that the process of catechesis, or basic Christian religious education, would be heavily taught and embedded upon children and adult converts. Seminaries were also built, with the Royal and Consular San Carlos Seminary founded on April 28, 1702. Several other institutions, such as the Ateneo de Manila, were built throughout the country and still stand to this day. These educational institutions became the foothold from which the Filipino people would fully embrace Christianity and its value of charity and compassion. The first Filipino saints. The martyrdom of San Lorenzo Ruiz and San Pedro Calungsod both happened in 1637 and 1672 respectively. They were known to have excellent zeal when doing missionary work, which eventually led to their demise. They were then declared as saints because of their actions, making them effectively the first Filipino saints in history. As San Lorenzo Ruiz would say, "Had I 1,000 lives, all these to him I shall offer." The church blossomed into what it is today. Several centuries have passed, and the Roman Catholic Church still stands strong. Its strong foundation in the 16th and 17th centuries make it unbreakable, and missionaries such as the first Filipino saints became more widespread than ever before.
Since the 1970s, the Philippines have supplied all kinds of skilled and low-skilled workers to the world's more developed regions. A deeply rooted and pervasive culture of migration has been made moving abroad common, acceptable, even desirable as an option or a strategy for a better life. Filipinos actively take part in church-related activities. They fill empty churches, fill the air with joyous songs praising God. In Christianizing others, they Christianize themselves. Their efforts are productive, even without training in catechetics. However, Archbishop Gilbert Garcera of Lipa and Batangas recalled Pope Paul VI and John Paul II during their visits to Manila, over 10 years apart, when they called on Filipinos to be missionaries to the world. In the past 50 years, the Church has had the Filipino Mission Society, which is now very much present in different parts of Asia. It has lay missionaries also being sent to different parts of the world. There are also many Filipino priests and other religious men and women working in different parts of the world. The CBCP, Episcopal Commission on Migrants, says the Church recognizes the sacrifices and services of those working in foreign countries for their loved ones, and government throughout the Episcopal Commission. Filipino bishops reiterate the flight of Filipinos searching for jobs abroad, saying overseas workers are missionaries of the Catholic faith and help the Church in its mission to spread the gospel. Besides being the most trustworthy employees, Filipinos abroad actively participate in church activities and practice their faith sincerely, religiously, and vigorously. Since the end of the 1990s, Israel has been importing large numbers of migrant workers. The Filipino community is the largest among the migrant communities. A Filipino chaplaincy was established already in the 1990s. In April 2011, the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem formally established a coordination for the Pastoral Among Migrants, CPAM, later transformed into Vicariate for Migrants and Asylum Seekers, VMAS, under the responsibility of a patriarchal vicar. From 1990 to 2013, 4 chaplaincies were established in Israel: the Filipino, the Indian, the Sri Lankan, and the Gayese Rite chaplaincies. In addition to pastoral care provided by the chaplaincies, the VMAS gives special attention to the second generation, sons and daughters of migrants, through different activities such as infant care, catechism, after-school programs, and youth programs. Given this ministry, a few pastoral centers were established: the Pastoral Center Our Lady Woman of Valor in Tel Aviv, the St. Joseph Center in Tel Aviv, and the St. Rachel Center in Jerusalem that the St. James Vicariate runs. The large Filipino migrant community in Israel preserves the traditions of the homeland and their country of residence. Among these traditions are Santa Cruzan and Flores de Mayo celebrations, celebrated in May, and the Holy Week celebration, which falls in March or April. The traditional Christmas novena, or Simbang Gabi, and caroling in preparation for Christmas was observed late evening, since this is a more convenient time for caregivers in different parts of Israel. The joy of Christmas and the Feast of the Holy Family that coincides with the New Year's Eve were highly celebrated by Filipinos in Israel and outside the Philippines. Various feasts were also observed and celebrated by different Filipino communities in Israel. The spirit of unity was shown by supporting each other's feasts. The Filipinos were expected to do more for the gospel, and they were always known to deliver no matter the circumstances. For now, we'll have to let time tell us what it has in store for the Christian community in the Philippines. Let's celebrate the strength of Christianity in this country and persevere in doing what is right for the glory of God.
We stand before the grand horizon, 500 years of faith, grateful today. We bear the gift of we are gifted to give and live our gift.